Okay, so not wasting any more time, I'm going to be showing you guys exactly how I learned how to draw the human body. Pretty much super easy, super simple. This is the method that I use. So first off, you want to start by gathering your reference, right? Your reference is key. It's very, very important. And if you're somebody who hates the idea of using reference, then I'm sorry, you're probably going to have to go to the back of the class, because you're going to, one, hate everything that I'm going to be saying after this point, and two, you probably don't want to improve as fast as everybody else because you think that for some reason using reference is cheating, but it isn't. Second, I start off with shape identification. After I found my reference, once again, your main standpoint, where you get your information from, I start to use shapes by tracing over my reference. Oh my god, oh no, tracing. Once again, back in the class. I am not stealing from this reference at all. I am just simply trying to find out how it works. That's why I'm using shapes to break it down to a standpoint that I know that I can understand. Because I don't know anatomy. You don't need anatomy to do what I'm doing right here. You simply just need to know how shapes work and how to use them to construct the human body. After I identify the core shapes that are used in my reference, I therefore move on to understanding. Pretty much is where I redraw what I've just broken down on my own, right? This is where I don't worry too much about being perfect. It's just my own understanding. I'm testing myself to see if I understood anything that I just created, right? So I try to figure stuff out on my own. I try to see if I'm able to draw it on my own, because this will help me to not always need to trace over my references, but instead I could just look at a reference, see the shapes right off the bat, and then I can start to break things down on my own. Then after coming to my understanding, I move on to details. And that's pretty much it. It's super easy, super simple. You don't need any anatomy knowledge whatsoever to do this. All you really just need is just the basic understanding of shapes and how to put them together or construct them to make whatever you want to make. Also, quick tip. Most of the times whenever you're looking at your reference typically has clothes on. The clothes can be used to help you to identify the core main shape of whatever you're referencing, instead of focusing so much on the underlying details such as the boobs, the abs, so on and so forth. You can use the clothing that is on your reference to help you to identify the core shape. It's just pretty much helping you to ignore all the useless information at that point in time and focus mainly on what you need to construct whatever you're constructing. So as time goes on, it's also very important for you to now start to apply anatomy to your studies. Pretty much this is where you start to understand the reason why, for example, Markii uses that shape to represent the upper part of the body. In case most of you don't know, I'm going to be putting up a little skeleton structure here on the screen. That little shape is used to represent the rib cage. Pretty much, the rib cage is a little egg with a cutout at the bottom. That's what I use to represent the rib cage, and that's what plenty of other artists that you've probably seen use as well. Because we start to know that these shapes are important to represent these core things. We start to use little triangle shapes, little panty-like shapes to represent the pelvis, little circle shapes to represent the shoulders, because we have a basic understanding of the anatomy that is there. So once you start to get an understanding of anatomy, you start to understand why we use the shapes that we use, or why you might use the shape that you use. Because at the end of the day, it's all about your understanding and what you can get from it. So don't worry too much about what I use, as long as whatever you use, you understand. And as time goes on, you'll find yourself not really needing to be using references, because you've already built up so much years of practice, so much time of practice, that your mental library already has plenty of references stored up in there in your little cranium. You know what I'm saying? Then you also find out as well that you can start to look at things in real life and break them down just by observing them, because you've now unlocked the artist's eye. You start to realize everything is just shapes. You start to look at buildings, you realize it's just shapes. Cars, just shapes. Your dog is just the shape. Your mom is just the shape. The subscribe button is just the shape. Everything is just shapes being stacked upon each other, built up, and, refined to a certain degree. If you're aiming for perfection, then you can go to the front of the class. Heck, you could even leave the class, because that's built up of years of experience and time and effort being put in to create whatever you want to create. But pretty much with that being said, that's how I learned how to draw the human body without any real knowledge about anatomy at all. Of course, it's very useful and helpful for you to know anatomy, but you don't really need it in that fine detail if you want to draw like basic human body or basic human proportions. As usual, thank you guys so much for watching today's video. Happy drawing. I'm watching you from afar, and I'm rooting for you. Peace. Don't forget to check out the Patreon link below in the description, more tutorials, and check out Discord.